My name is Caleb, and you're in the studio once again with a fantastic guest who we've brought in to have a chat about local issues and possible future candidacy. It is, of course, Luke Gosling. He's a Labour candidate for both Darwin and Palmerston. How are you today, Luke?
Fantastic, Caleb, mate. Thanks for having me in the studio.
It's very welcome to have you in, and we'll be talking about some of the things that you'll hopefully be bringing to the territory, as well as a bit about yourself, actually. So I think
yes, mate, great. Looking forward to it. I'm very passionate about the territory, and particularly Darwin and Palmerston, which is my home for my wife, Kate, and our kids, Sally and Frank. And I've got a lot of plans for the future. So thanks for the opportunity to come in and have a yarn.
Excellent. So the main issue is, who are you? In other words, I don't mean that in an insipid way, but for the people out there who are looking to tick your name on the ballot box, like who are you? Who can they vote for?
Yeah. My name is Luke Gosling. So Gosling, of course, is a baby goose. And I'm I haven't proven that I'm related to Ryan Gosling, the actor, yet, but I suspect, because there's an obvious sort of similarity.
Of course, yeah.
No, but no, my family comes from the Yarra Valley originally, but I fell in love with the territory at a pretty young age. I'm the eldest of 8 kids, so big, you might have guessed, a big Catholic family. And we come up here and travelled extensively through the territory when we're all pretty young and sort of fell in love with the place. I joined the Army and ended up coming up to the territory a fair bit with the Army, and remember parachuting in over the Gulf country.
Wow.
Working with Norforce and also we did some exercises out down Nooka way. So yeah, it was great to just, after being out bush and very tired and smelly, to dive into Mataranka Springs. And so I've just had this ongoing love affair with the territory and moved here and set up a life. And now my wife Kate and I, who was working here for the ABC and for Warren Snowden, someone that a lot of your listeners will know, hooked up to a big mortgage and got a couple of little Territorians, and very happy to had the privilege to be selected by the Labor Party to run in the federal election again. Excellent.
Now, you do have a military background, and there are a lot of military people here in Darwin and Palmerston itself, especially at the barracks. Is there anything you'd like to say or implement in the future towards those people that are living here that are a part of the service?
Yeah, that's a good question, Callum. I guess I'm very proud to have a 13-year service with the Australian Army, which included, as I said, some of those infantry roles, but also was selected for Special Forces. So I was in the Commandos, but also have worked in East Timor, helping them to develop their defence force. And also I've worked in non-army but security roles over in Afghanistan. So where we were sort of targeted over there, pretty dangerous environment. So I have some understanding of some of the issues that our soldiers face, but also that the families face. Long periods away, to have someone in your family away for a long period of time in a dangerous environment. And I guess from our perspective, from Labor's perspective, we want to support defence families, but we also want to make sure that those defence members get paid properly. So what happened under the Abbott Turnbull government is that the pay of soldiers was actually cut. So I guess that's my pitch to them, is that, well, they know themselves, like I'm one of them, or I was formerly in the Army. I know the circumstances under which they live, the pressures on their family, and we just want to make sure that they're looked after, basically.
And how about the older veterans who are living on the pension for the, of course, military pension?
Yeah, no, exactly. So we've still got we've got a couple of World War II veterans still around, but we've got a lot of Vietnam vets.
Yeah.
I'm actually what they call a service member of the Vietnam Vets Association of the Northern Territory. So my father fought in Vietnam, and his father, my pop, went away in World War II. So we've kind of third generation Australian Army. So I know the effects that service can have on veterans, and we need to make sure that they're properly looked after, particularly with the Vietnam vet guys. Anyone who was conscripted, so the government said you're going to war. I mean, we have an obligation as a society to look after those men and women, as we do with the young ones now. We've been very involved in younger veterans issues. Mm-hmm. We're looking at getting an organisation called Soldier On started up here, but also I've been working with the Vietnam vets who have been reaching out to the younger soldiers, but also working a lot with a family that people, Territorians will know well, the Palmer family.
Okay.
Yeah, they lost their son Scotty over in Afghanistan. So I've been working closely with Ray and Pam to not only make sure that their son is well remembered, but that other soldiers who are having difficulties after their service or having difficulties making that transition into civilian life get some more support. It's very important.
Now, in your service as well, we were talking earlier, you'd mentioned that you were a part of a health thing that was developed. So what was that about?
Well, like through my work out in the communities with Norforce in particular, just seeing that we need to focus on improving health outcomes there for people out in the communities and also in the town communities of Darwin and Palmerston as well. So I was approached to set up the Remote Area Health Corps. So the idea of this organisation was to get down south doctors, nurses, dentists, physios, get them into Darwin, get them some training so that they got a bit better an understanding of the communities and what's culturally appropriate, and support them while they're out there in the communities to give us more health professionals up here. Because sometimes there's hard-working health professionals out in those clinics, but they need to have a break at times. So the idea was to get these down south people to come up and fill in the gaps, to do a good job while they're there and hopefully come back. So I was really proud that we did have some health professionals that decided to move up here more permanently to help out, or that just keep coming back once, twice, 3 times a year.
Excellent. So you do have a big role in healthcare in the Territory.
I think healthcare is extremely important, mate.
So this is a great segue to go straight into Palmerston Hospital.
Oh, the Palmerston Hospital. Now, people will remember in the last federal election that I was campaigning strongly for the Palmerston Hospital.
Yep.
But I was concerned that we didn't have enough funding to make the hospital that we needed out there. So the federal commitment at that time was $70 million from Labor, and then the NT government was putting in $40 million. What I successfully argued to Kevin Rudd and that we announced during that election campaign is that the federal commitment would increase by $40 million, so $110 million federal commitment.
Wow.
I was really proud of that, and so it's been particularly disappointing to see that after a couple of years now, all that really has happened with $56 million that's been transferred to the Northern Territory government from the federal government is a hole in the ground that had concrete poured into it and then was covered up. Now, I don't want to be overly political about this,
sure,
but it is a disgrace that has happened. And look, all the people of Darwin and Palmerston want is a hospital in Palmerston. And why is it important for people in Darwin? Because the Royal Darwin Hospital is under enormous pressure.
Sure.
So if we can build this hospital in Palmerston, it will take some of that pressure off. But also all the doctors, nurses, physios that live out in Palmerston can work in the Palmerston Hospital. And the people of Palmerston, should there be a car accident on the highway, should one of their people in Palmerston's kids have an accident, someone suffers an asthma attack, someone has a heart attack, there's a hospital close by, particularly for old people.
Yeah.
They don't want to be travelling. It takes them a whole day to get over to Royal Darwin Hospital for an appointment.
Sure.
We need this hospital in Palmerston. We need it built now. We just don't need any more stunts. We just need it built. So I'm very passionate about that, but also making sure that the Royal Darwin Hospital is improved. And I think then we'll be in a good place.
Well, I actually have family members who are paramedic drivers, and they mimic the exact same issues that you have in terms of picking up people who are in strife and having to drive all the way to Darwin's, Royal Darwin Hospital to actually get these people looked at. And that's a 25-minute drive.
Yeah, and that could make the difference. And let's not forget about our brothers and sisters out in the rural area or as far out as Bachelor, because even though they're not in the electorate that I'm running for, Darwin and Palmerston, things can go wrong out in the rural area, and if you can stop off the highway at the Palmerston Hospital and get treated rather than having to go all the way through to Royal Darwin, that could make a big difference.
So what are you hoping to do if you do become a full member to do with the Palmerston Hospital?
Yeah, I will be fighting in Canberra. See, the problem is that we're underrepresented down in Canberra. And that's an issue that, in time with statehood, perhaps we'll get more representation down there. I really hope we do, because, it'd be good to have a bit of force in numbers down there.
Sure.
But given that we've only got one person to represent Darwin and Palmerston, that person actually has to stand up for us. And that is what I'll do as the member for Solomon if the people of Darwin and Palmerston give me their faith in the next federal election. But we really need to make sure that any federal funding is being used for what it's supposed to be used for. So in the case of the Palmerston Hospital, it is the job of the member for Solomon to make sure that the Northern Territory government is actually fulfilling its role that is signed by the Northern Territory government in that agreement. So I will be across all the detail, and I'll be making sure that hospital gets built on time. Look, I just hope that by the time the next elections come around, it's at least started. And that we don't see any wasted money, because we just need this hospital built, and we need it built yesterday, really. So, I will be making that one of my major priorities. Okay.
Another big issue that Territorians are facing throughout the whole of the Territory, I should say, not just Darwin and Palmerston, is the cost of living. We have higher housing and renting costs more than any other place. Thankfully, we've got lower petrol costs, which is a rarity nowadays. So what do you hope to actually do or bring to the table for cost of living in the Territory, or Darwin and Palmerston regardless?
Yeah. Well, petrol prices, as you know, have been consistently sort of 25 cents higher than the rest of the country up until very recently. And sort of that's sort of a welcome development, but at the same time, we're still paying too much for petrol. Now, I am not going to pretend that I can drive down petrol prices, and I won't try and take any of the credit for it. I think there has been a great grassroots campaign of people putting pressure on the petrol companies there. But I think rents are very high here as well. Now, some people notice that rents are coming back a bit at the moment. That's obviously welcome relief, but they can probably come back more still. But what we really need to do is get some money into people's pockets. Now, that's by growing the economy, making sure there's jobs for people, making sure people have the skills and the education that they need for the jobs of the future. So that's a massive priority for Labor. Well, we want to prepare our workforce for those jobs of the future, and it doesn't mean that every kid has to be a tech expert. Now, there will be more and more kids that sort of stream into that tech area, but we're still going to need all sorts of tradespeople. So we just need to spend more money, and that's a big focus of the Labor Party, is to focus more resources in getting young people onto the pathways to jobs. So that's giving them the skills, the support that they need to get jobs, and that's a way that we can help. But there's other ways too, and at the moment I'm working on an idea with my colleagues that involves increasing zone tax offset for people who live in the north of Australia. So as you guys know, if you're a working person paying tax, you're given, if you live in the territory, as what they call a zone tax offset A. So that's $338 from the government to assist with the higher costs of living up here. Well, that hasn't changed since 1993. Yeah. So it was actually brought in 1945 after the war, and then it sort of increased, but then things sort of stopped in 1993, and that's one of the things I'm working on, because I think everyone knows that in Darwin and Palmerston, indeed in the territory, we pay more for stuff. Yeah. Everything's a bit more expensive, so I want a review of that, and I'm working towards reviewing that with a view to increasing it. I hope that's one of the things we can do.
Excellent. Well, there are a lot of single parents out there that are feeling the strain, especially when cost for living is so high, and the only thing they get from the government is, like you're saying, roughly around $350 a week or a fortnight.
No, that's for the year, $338 for the year. This is a zone tax offset. But another thing is obviously the welfare system.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to.
Look, I think people out there that know that the welfare system is often under attack by the conservative governments of our country. Now, let's make no bones about that. I think Labor wants to support people into work and working people, but we also understand that not everyone is in the position where they can work. Yeah. Now, that may be because they're a single parent, and maybe because they've got some form of disability. There's lots of reasons why. So, I mean, one of the things that we're really proud of in our country is that we have a safety net where we don't let people get left behind. And so, even though we don't want people ripping the system off as well, we really understand that there are people who just aren't in a position to work. So we need to make sure that we're giving those people the support they need to either get into a job or to look after their family.
That's great. Now, families are a big thing in the Territory, especially in Aboriginal communities. What things, or what are you hoping to bring to the people that live in the Aboriginal communities around Darwin and Palmerston?
Well, I'm talking to people in the town communities, and what I'm hoping to bring to them is a better understanding of their position. And when I say that, I think housing is a very big problem. Now, obviously, I work close with my Northern Territory Labor colleagues around that issue. But I think there are things that we can do from a federal perspective to help. That's getting the environment right for those sorts of developments and partnerships with the Territory government as well. And making sure that, again, taxpayer funds that are spent actually get the outcome on the ground. So increased appropriate housing where it's needed is very important, because some people aren't rich, like me. Anyone out there who's got a family knows that families are expensive, right? And sometimes it's hard to, and young people even without a family, to get a deposit to buy a house, it's very, very difficult. So I think there's a lot more we can do in that space to help young people on a realistic pathway to be able to own their own house. The great Australian dream, but also for people who aren't in a position to buy, that they've got appropriate housing. Is incredibly important. But I think for young people, we need to be giving young people a lot more options for leisure time or for time after school. I think we need, and I'm seeing this in areas of Palmerston where there's nothing really for the younger people to do. And then people wonder why the kids are getting into trouble. Well, I think if we focused on a couple of more facilities where kids can go and engage in fun stuff and even a bit of educational stuff, a bit of sport, I think that'll go a long way towards helping to prevent kids from going the wrong way.
Okay. So more after-school activities for students and younger kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there's nothing to do but walk around, on the streets late at night, look, that's going to lead to, trying ice, going the wrong way, mixing with people that are really not going to take you in a positive direction. So I think we've got to do a lot more. I mean, obviously we need to clamp down on on those people who are taking advantage of people, but also at the preventative end. And obviously this is not just Aboriginal people in Darwin and Palmerston. This is, all sorts of young people these days are under incredible pressure and stresses. And I think the more we can do to help them and work with them, they're smart young people, the better the outcomes we'll get.
Okay, so more amenities, more facilities, more workshops and exercises.
Yeah.
Excellent. We've gotten through quite a lot today. Luke, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we go to a song?
Yeah, look, I just want to thank you for coming in. I've got a lot more to say, so I'd like to come back.
Of course.
Another time. I don't want to necessarily go on too long here, but look, Labor will look after people, will not let people get left behind. That is our main rationale. We are for others. We're for the community. We're not just for the top end of town or, for our rich mates or for developers or whatever. We want to make sure that people can live a dignified life, that community is supported, and we'll make sure that people don't get left behind with good health facilities. Let's get that Palmerston Hospital built, and good education. We haven't really touched on education, but we must stop money being taken by territory governments out of the education department. And we must make sure that from the federal perspective, don't forget that Gonski was what we came up with to support kids on a need and schools on a needs basis. So Gonski was all about improving the education system by getting more resources to kids who need it, needs-based funding. Now, the Libs haven't committed to keeping the Gonski process in track, and I think that's a mistake. Labor will always focus on education because we know that a good educated community is a community that will thrive. Yeah. And that's what we want for people in Darwin and Palmerston.
Well, hopefully you can be the one that does it.
Thanks very much for your time today, Carl. It was great having a chat.
Thank you very much.